Hi, this is Joe Soto, and welcome to Journey with Joe. And today we're going to talk with JJ Mazzo. Awesome, great guy, good friend, mentor of mine. And we're going to talk about his journey from where he started to where he's at today and the ups and downs and bruises and battles along the way. I know there's been a bunch. And so that's part of the Journey podcast that we're putting together here is it's really easy to look at somebody from the top and say, man, this guy's got it all together, right? But there's lots of blood, sweat, and tears that go into that. And so that's what we're going to touch on. That's what we're going to go over. And we're going to dig deep, JJ, and we're going to tell a little bit about you. How does that sound?
I love it, man. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, buddy.
Cool. So I met JJ a couple of years ago through the Core. I seeked him out. I found him because he was more successful than I was. And I was like, this guy's got to have it all together. And as we've come to know each other over the years, we've both learned that we're really pretty broken.
Yeah.
Right? And
totally.
And we're broken, and we've learned a lot along the way. So let's start off with telling me a little bit about how you grew up, where you're from, family background. I'm sure, you're a successful guy now, so you probably grew up with the silver spoon in your mouth and
yeah, right.
Just had it all handed to you, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's awesome. First off, man, this is pretty, I'm really proud of you. This is really cool, man. You're doing a fantastic job. Just watching you grow and where you're at and through the bumps and bruises, man, it's really cool to watch, man. So cool. I'm proud of you. And it's super honored to be here and be your first guest of, I know that'll be many to come.
Yes, sir.
I don't know where you want me to start, man. I think that we all in life, regardless of what it is that you do, have challenges that, happen to us. I think so many of them usually happen when we're younger, and they kind of build calluses on us over time. Mm-hmm. And, I think many of us try and avoid those things until it is that we can't avoid those things anymore. For me, it was really just trying to seek approval, honestly, for a long, long time, seek approval. So, when I was younger, we moved around a lot. That was just, I've always said this and joked around, my pop was, when you got first and last month's payment, first and last month's rent, that was going to be the first and the last month's rent you were ever going to get from my pop. So we found ourselves living in hotel rooms, 5 of us, for periods of time. And probably I went to, my wife and I were counting probably 16 different schools over a period of time.
Wow.
And just trying to settle in and seek the approval of peers or parents and everything else. Being the youngest I had 3 brothers and 1 sister, and the youngest by like 15 years is the next closest person to me.
Oh, wow.
So, I had an older father. My dad was 45, which is how old I am now, when I was like born.
Yeah.
And
could you imagine having a baby right now?
Dude, not even remotely.
Wow.
Maybe
crazy.
A grandbaby is where my mind's at with
That's
teenage
crazy.
girls. But, yeah, I think a lot of the moving around and a lot of the struggles. And then, my dad's solution, I had rich dad, poor dad. I always joke around with that per the book, but my dad was not the example of a rich dad. He was, his example was bankruptcy, not knowing finances. And so that's who I looked to for work ethic, but it's all I had to look to for finances too. So it was a recipe for disaster as I grew to be a young man. Got married, had a wife, had my first child, and just found myself in a mess. Ultimately, when the crash happened in 2009 in our industry, in the mortgage industry, that's where the tides really turned for me.
Yeah. So growing up, it's safe to say that you didn't have many financial mentors or somebody who showed you money, right? For me, growing up, money was something you never talked about.
No.
Right. And so it was paycheck to paycheck. It was dollar to dollar. And so, we learned, I didn't learn till a long later about money. So for you, it seemed like it was the same thing, right? It was, nobody talked about money and there was never enough of it, but nobody taught you how to make more of it.
No,
right?
My dad's theory was it's as long as you worked, you were always going to have money. And that was his mindset for his whole life, really, through his 70s until he couldn't work anymore and got ill. And that was a turning point for me too, is seeing that, and that work ethic and that drive was awesome for me. It's really where I pulled a lot of that, but no, that's just not how life works. There was no money saved. It was nothing like that. It was just paycheck to paycheck and sometimes meal to meal. And I never really noticed it. My pop was really good at, hindsight, you look back at it as an adult now and you're like, oh my gosh, you did a really great job at providing so that I never felt like I was going without as a kid. You know, I think it was until I was in my teens and we're living, you know, 5 of us stuffed in a hotel room for Thanksgiving turkey in a microwave. That's kind of where like it all came to a head. And, you know, especially bratty teenagers, I think that's where I got some anger from and finally realized that situation. But he did do a, you know, really great job for a long period of time of us not even noticing. So
Yeah. And you don't realize what you don't have, right? Like you're happy in the moment. And for me, it was the same thing, right? I didn't realize until I got older and I was like, man, my mom busted her ass
yeah,
to give us what she had,
Yeah.
right? Like she literally took from Peter to pay Paul or did whatever she had to do to make ends meet. And it was just, you're right. Until you get to a certain point, I think you want your own stuff. You're like, well, I got to work because if I want some nice stuff, my only option is to get a job,
yeah,
right? Like, so for me, I worked at 14.
Yep.
You know, and my first job, I joke, was a drug dealer because I worked at a pharmacy in Brooklyn. And in the pharmacy in Brooklyn, I would deliver the prescriptions to the old people who couldn't leave their house.
yeah.
Right. I was 13-year-old slinging, you know,
Pills.
pills to the old people legally.
Legally,
This was before you could deliver like, you know, marijuana like you can now. Right.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting. Before we keep going, I do have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Coastal Insurance Group. Super good guys, great with insurance. Really your go-to guys if you have questions on all of that stuff because they're awesome. They do my own insurance. They handle my family, so they can definitely handle yours too. So again, we talked about growing up, and then let's get into the crash, right? Because the crash is where it separated the men from the boys.
Yeah.
And you're a knucklehead like me.
Yep.
Because the crash happened. I stayed doing loans. Everybody got out to go do whatever, modifications, credit repair, right? Like everybody was like, I'm going to go do this. But knuckleheads like us, we stayed doing loans.
Yeah, I didn't really have options. It was that or washing a car. I was really good at washing cars.
Yeah.
So it was one or the other. I figured I'd just stick with the loan thing.
Yeah. So crash happens. I remember I worked for 3 banks that got shut down by the FDIC in 1 year. So literally, yeah. I was like my 4th time I went to go get hired and they were like, dude, you're kind of bad luck. Like the government finds you and shuts down your company.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, I bet, right?
It was miserable. And so talk to me about that, right? Crash happens and you were very well prepared for the crash, right? Like you were
absolutely.
Solid, ready to go.
Yeah,
Lots of money in the bank and good foundation.
Yeah, I was totally prepared. Bankruptcy papers already ready to go. That was about as prepared as I was. I had the bike so that the bike tires were filled up. So when they took the cars from me, at least I had a way to get to and fro.
Yeah.
No, it was hard,
Tell me about the car and the bike.
So yeah, it was. I remember it pretty well. Similar to you, I was looking at. I was working for mortgage banks, not banks, and investors were dropping every day. There was something we'd watch called the Implodometer, and each day it was showing you the companies going out of business. So
remember that?
You'd have a loan with one company, and then the next morning you go, and that company's out of business.
Gone.
So it was chaos until the company that I worked for also shut down, and at that point. I was doing refinances. So it was 100% refinances dependent upon, no purchase business whatsoever. And I was also doing just internet leads. So I was fortunate enough that when I first started in the business, we started with internet leads as they were coming out. So they were actually
good old lending tree.
They were pretty fruitful at that time. And until the crash happened, and it was to live and die by the refi. And I had gone through a couple cycles already and saw the ebbs and flows, but that was the one that made a real big difference for me, in the fact that it just stopped. So I mean, I was for where it was suddenly now you're at poverty level. Yeah, you're at poverty level. You're working really really good, making great money as I saw it. Really great money for my age. And then we had a 2-3-year-old, a baby on the way. My wife and I had been married for a couple years at that point. So not ideal for being a provider for a family. And then, it just kept piling on. My mom passed away that year. My wife's mom passed away that year. It was just like one thing after another. It just seems like when it rains, it pours. So I just found myself in a really, really bad position, bad mindset, and depressed, lots of anxiety, and it's a true thing. We moved from our beautiful golf course, 3,800 square foot home to a 1,100 square foot little Cracker Jack, but I'm very grateful for it, dude.
With a pregnant wife and a little baby.
Yeah,
Wow.
pregnant wife, a little baby, and then they pulled all the cars. They came and took all those, and we did have one car that was left that we didn't include in the bankruptcy, and they came and took that because it was a lease, and there's a little clause that says if you file bankruptcy, we can take that too.
Oh,
even
really?
even if the court says you can keep it. So yeah, I didn't prepare for that either. So it was the bike. It was just the darn bike, and I had the beach cruiser, and I'd go down to this little. I would rent a cubicle for $100 a month, and just pound the phones and make lots of phone calls, doing it the way I'd always done. And it was enough to just barely squeak by. And I had to sell things and cash out 401ks. I mean, it was really a turning point for me where I was sitting in my driveway and just in tears, just going, asking God, give me some direction because this ain't working. And really didn't have anyone to ask advice for. And that's where I had turned and started, looking into purchase business and looking to change my business model because it just clearly wasn't working in what I was doing. And that's when I found the core.
Gotcha. I remember that time, and just, the phone didn't ring, right? You were just like, I was working, 50 hours a week to make my $2,000 base.
Yeah.
And I was like,
100, 200 phone calls a day. No problem. And you're working 6-7 days a week just to do that.
To do it. Yeah. And it was miserable. And you had the same situation with little ones at home, and you're just like, man, where does it turn? Right. And it's hard to keep positive. It's hard to stay married.
Yeah.
Right. Like that for me, I look back on that time, and man, like my wife hung in there with me.
Yeah, mine did too, man.
And your wife hung in there with you, and that ended so many relationships, right? And I think through God and through staying together, it's like to navigate that time, like that was the lowest of the low.
100%, man. I mean, we almost didn't survive that either. I mean, we were young, and we were new couple, and newly married, new parents, new, and it's like that's a lot of pressure. You can look at things a little differently in your mid 40s, obviously, but when you're in your 20s and early 30s and stuff, it's like, holy moly. But yeah, she stuck with me. That's for sure. I mean, everything after that, it seems like we can work through it with ease.
For sure.
That's the plus.
Everything else is like easy, because that at the time, and when you're in it, right, we talk about the storm a lot, but when you're in it, and then there wasn't an easy way out, right? Like like me, you knew how to just work.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I always say I'm like a grunt, right? Like I'm like a caveman. I can just go pick up the phone, call.
Yeah.
And you could do that for 7 hours a day and not get anything.
Yeah. I think just staying in the grind and staying in the work provides some peace and comfort because it's the only thing that you can control. And so many of these things are outside of our control.
Yeah.
Even the market we're in today, the changing market we're in today, and I just see pressure will either paralyze you or propel you, and it's always been one of those things that's propelled me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can have moments of paralyzation, but I mean, as a whole, looking at your activities and what are you doing? Are you paralyzed or are you propelling? And I think for me, going back to that time at the crash, I was definitely propelled, but I had moments of paralyzation, like sitting in that driveway. And I think contemplation is a beautiful thing. I think you have to sit there and contemplate what's working, what's not working, asking yourself these questions. What can I do different? What can I control? What can I not control? And really sitting down and asking yourselves these questions in any tough situation those are some of the tools that I've taken with me to, going forward.
Yeah.
In those type of similar situations.
It sounds like that driveway moment was like one of those big moments, right? Where you remember that. It sounds like you remember that vividly.
100%.
Like sitting there and just, man, this is like the bottom.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I remember mine vividly. I was sitting on the floor in my living room crying, just feeling like I failed everybody. Right. And so I like you telling me the driveway is the same thing with me being on the floor, like by myself, sitting there.
Yeah, dude, blackout drinking at the time, especially losing my mom, and we had unresolved issues there. That made it super hard. And, my whole thing was always working for her approval, which I never had the chance to get while she was around. So that was a huge driver for me in the years to come. Which is very hard to have a dead person approve of what you're doing. So it's very difficult. Let me tell
deep.
you,
we went deep, people.
We went deep. That's just a reality of my life for probably about 2 or 3 years until it kind of dawned on me that's just not super healthy, nor was it ever going to go anywhere. But that from that point forward, during that time, it was a big shift for me. Now fast forward to where we're at now. Lost my father and my father-in-law just in the past 3 months. We're in a crazy market. Rates are up 3%, but it's like how I am mentally and how I deal with them and the stress and is inherently different because of just having mentors and tools to help me through that.
The highs were high and the lows were really low back then. Right now, and I think we talked about this when we first met, right? Like I was like an earthquake, right? Like I was one of those crazy graphs. And now I'm like more, level water, even though if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm still hot-headed Puerto Rican from New York. But for the most part, you're right? Like it's not, the highs aren't so high and the lows definitely aren't that low.
Yeah, I think having just the right mentors and people in your life that'll never let you fall as far or for as long. Ooh. I think is the two things that I've really realized, and who you surround yourself with. If I look at who I was surrounded by and with at that period of time, and who I've over the period of years since then, who I've made sure with intent to surround myself with, that is a huge impact on those type of things too. Whether or not you're getting growth, whether or not you have the gratitude, whether or not you're seeking God in your life versus everything else. And everything else is really easy,
Super easy. There's tons of negativity and stuff to throw you off the rails out there. So it's really important of who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, I think instant gratification or the long-term gain. And it's like, man, the instant gratification is so much easier than the long-term gain for sure.
Yeah. So you talk about mentors, you talk about seeking approval, and we've talked about coaching, right, a lot. So talk to me about that. How did you get into coaching? How did you find a coach? Because, it's like back then you didn't just Google coaches, right? Or you didn't think you needed one. If you're like me, you're like, I don't need a coach. Like, I got this. I'm Joe. Right? Totally. So how do you find the core? How do you find Rick Ruby? How does that kind of come? And then we'll talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think at that time it was in the driveway moment. I had a friend of mine, Jessica Uphoff, and she and I were both working in the call center. We compete back and forth with each other. And when the crash happened, she had come. She's like, man, we really got to start looking doing some purchase business or something different. So I was like, I'm down to try something different. That sounds good. It seems like people always need to buy houses.
Yeah.
And so it sparked that. She had gone and went and found the core, and she was giving me CDs to listen to. And so I was like, okay, I can do this on my own. I'm just going to listen to these CDs. Plus, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford coaching. I could barely afford Top Ramen at that point. So I was listening to them and just working through that until I was able to afford to go to the event that we throw called the Mega.
Yep.
And it was the first Mega. It was in Dallas. It was only $500 to go. So I was like, perfect. Sweet. And then went there, and that was the beginning of the end, so to speak, when I met Rick and started working on purchase business and doing it on my own until I, went to the core and sought them for coaching.
Gotcha. And that was, what year was that? 20?
I think it was 2011.
Oh, wow.
When I went to the Mega, when I went to that first Mega. So it was 2011.
Gotcha. And so how was Kimberly when you were like, hey, I'm going to start coaching and it costs X dollars per month?
Oh, man. So by the time, to be able to get into coaching, you have to be able to qualify. So I didn't qualify because you had to make a certain amount to be able to get in. So finally, when I was able to qualify to go to the summit event, I go, and I couldn't get accepted. I think it took me 2 times to get accepted in there anyways. So, but by the time it was the same price as our mortgage, and keep in mind, we already foreclosed on the other home. So now I'm coming to her. And I remember my best friend, Brad, who works for me, and he's been with me a long time. He's my best friend of 30 years. He looked at me, he's like, you've lost your damn mind. This sounds like a cult. There's no way you should do this, right? And I really respect what he says. But I'm also a super high D personality, so I just take it with a grain of salt and do it anyways.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Yeah. And so I did. And my wife, believe it or not, she was very supportive. She's like, I think she saw what I was doing on my own and how it was changing the business. And at that point, it couldn't be worse than what we had already gone through. And she's always just had my back, man. That's what I love about my wife. Super, just always had my back for the most part. And unless we're talking about like little nagging stuff at home.
Yeah.
But outside the big stuff, she always has my back on. So she was okay with it. But she looked at me with the little crazy eyes as well. But I think it was that pressure, again, the pressure that propels me, that I was not going to fail. There was no way I could fail. So anything they asked me to do, I would do. Anytime it was time to implement it, I would implement it instantly. And I just made sure that when I got in and got that opportunity, I wasn't going to let my family down and screw this all up again. So it was pretty darn powerful, I think, writing that check and having that amount of responsibility. You know, I didn't think about, hey, I was going to be able to change my business and make that money back quickly. It was, I'm going to change my business and make $1 million. I mean, it was really just, I had this mindset that was so fixated on the opposite of failure. And again, seeking out the approval of my, of my past, and the same token, making sure that I'm not going to let my family down. So it was a pretty powerful moment joining coaching at that time.
So having that propel you, right? Because for most people, especially in this market, whether you're in any part of this real estate industry, title, escrow, lenders, realtors, they're paralyzed by that, right? By the fear.
Yeah.
What do you think drives you? Is it just your desire to not fail? Is it you're seeking approval from other coaches? Like what separates you from the people who shut down?
I think necessity, right? When you have small children and you have, a young family, it's our job to provide for them. So that was the one thing that my dad always did, is he was able to provide. It wasn't always the best, but it was still providing. I never went super hungry. I never had to be in the rain. So I think that was what drove me the most, and then money was always a driver for me. It's not that money makes me happy, but it's always like a scoreboard is the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
So, and my dad was the same way. He'd pay me for grades, and it was like, I'd be getting a D, and he's like, I'll give you $100 for an A. And I'd be like, get an A the next semester. So I was always economically motivated by that stuff.
So you're motivated by, like, I know we talk about it, right? Pressure, praise, or competition. What is it for you?
It's pressure for sure. And then competition would be second. And I usually, I have found it's not really healthy for me to compete against other people, although I naturally will want to compete, but I found competing against myself and my bars have been the most useful. It doesn't rob me of joy. It still allows me to compete. And then I'm always working to be the better version of myself, whether that's economically or, other areas of my life too.
Gotcha. So we get into coaching, right? And I know the coaching thing, we change coaches every 6 months. Who's your best coach aside from Rick? We're not going to give Rick all the props, but I think different coaches do different things for you at different times, right?
Yeah.
But if you were to say, hey, I had this one or two people, who were the ones that stand out to you where you would go, you know what, I had this person at this time and this was super impactful? Or maybe they're just still really good friends now. They've turned into be really good friends now.
Yeah, I would say all the coaches have, right? So
it's too generic of an answer, dude. I have to single you out.
I'm going to start with the generic answer.
Okay,
though.
good.
All right,
good.
I'm going to start with all of the coaches.
You can't
have been
go
a
all
large
the coaches
impact.
here. Yeah, I love everybody.
They all do something different, right? And that's why I say you get who you need when you need. But I would say the most impactful coach for me was who is one of my best friends on the planet now, Josh Sigmund. He is super intelligent, super smart, high IQ, very business savvy, and I'm none of those things. So it's fantastic because he really offsets, and we do have a lot of similarities, as far as things that we do alike. But when it comes to those type of things, I like it because he does have more a cerebral look at things that I'm not seeing and finds blind spots and really helps me just attack it from a tactical point of view, and I love tactics.
Yeah.
Rick is more the basic, hardcore, yell at you kind of coach, and I like that. I need a Nick Saban. I need someone yelling at me. I don't need a soft-spoken coach. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And all the coaches have been great. And what's cool is over time, I'd say the other would be Jimmy Reed, also one of my best friends, because he just calls it like he sees it.
Totally.
So, but what's great is we all coach each other all the time. So I probably seek out counsel every week. I'll talk to Lisa or Hunter or Nikki or Josh or Rick. So, I mean, I'm probably seeking counsel 3, 4, 5 different people every single week. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away is I don't know it all, but I know lots of people that all know what I need to know.
Yeah.
And seeking them out and listening, not just listening to them, but doing what they say, I think is also really, really important too.
Yeah, that's super huge. I love Jimmy. Jimmy's one of my favorite guys.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I think just having that person, maybe they've been through it already, or maybe, maybe they're going through it at the same time, right? Just having those people that you can piggyback off of and reach out to. There's, for whatever you pay in coaching, that is priceless.
Priceless.
Right? Like that's worth 100 times. Don't tell Rick, but that's worth 100 times what he charges for coaching.
Yeah.
Right. Is all of those people and having those people in your life to bring you up and to carry you through this.
Yeah. I think that what's great about it is, I always asked myself, how would coaching be truly in the crash? Because I didn't have coaching in that, or in a really down market. So going through that now, being in a really down market, having a clear plan, having accountability to the plan, having a community going through it with you as you're going through it is just so helpful for so many different reasons and mindsets. Like this morning, Hunter sent me a text to make sure I listened to, there's an app called Growth Day, and it's a really awesome app. Okay. You guys should all check it out. And it's basically just a personal growth app, and it has really great podcasts or listen for the day and journaling and all this stuff on there. But he sends that first thing in the morning about 6:30. Hey, you got to listen to this. It's a little bit longer, and it was fantastic. I think just those type of encouragements from other people, and going back to talking about who are you surrounding yourself with. I truly believe in our program that there's just the best of the best people, and not always doing the best things, but we're all so broken. It's great. We all get together and we're all working to get a little bit better and fix ourselves a little bit more. Yeah.
That's what I really love about the community as far as the core is everybody's come such a long way. Nobody forgets where they came from, right? They don't forget the journey, so to say, right? Because we've all started somewhere and it's never been easy, right? Like I joked about the silver spoon. I knew it wasn't a silver spoon. Yeah. Right. I know it's been blood, sweat, and tears the whole way, and it's been clawing your way up the mountain. But I think all of us in this community feel the same way, right? Like we've all been through the same. So it really is super duper awesome. And everybody's always willing to help.
Always, anytime. And I think that's the thing. People go, people have their opinion in our industry. All right, I love the core, I hate the core, whatever. Yeah. I just tell people, don't just seek counsel, get coaching. I don't care what kind of coaching it is, but if you're trying to sit there and solve a puzzle by yourself versus trying to solve a puzzle with a group of people that are all trying to solve the same puzzle, you're going to get a lot further, a lot faster. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you're with the core, and then you get the opportunity to go run the core. And you pick up and move.
Yeah.
Who the hell does that?
Yeah.
You're in Southern California. Like nobody leaves here, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah, I think it was 2 years after I got into coaching. 2 or 3 years, I got the opportunity to become a coach. So, coaching for us is Thursdays, and that was a huge opportunity. I think paying it forward, and it's also a second level of accountability. When you're telling people to do things, you don't want to be that fraud. So you're going to, if I tell you to do 20 jumping jacks, and I'm probably doing 20 jumping jacks because I don't want to go home saying, I'm just telling people to do things without doing them myself.
1,000%.
So I love that aspect of it. It's why I will always be a coach so long as I'm welcome to do so. And yeah, Rick gave me the opportunity to go out there and help run his level 1 and level 3 with him, and work with Kendra Cook, who's amazing, runs our realtor division. And it was just one of those things that I truly felt that it was the really the right thing. Mm-hmm. And that's where God was pulling me. And we packed up, we went there and went out there for about a year or so, and, went through some challenges with our oldest daughter being out there going through COVID. I think it was just too much, which is why we had come back, at least till they go off to college and stuff. But it was a pretty awesome opportunity, man. I really loved it out there in North Carolina. Yes, it was different. Yes, it was slower pace of life. But I just got a deeper appreciation. You got to be in the present and enjoy life way more than when you step off a plane and come here. It's just when you've lived both, you can see the difference.
For sure. So daughter going to college?
Yeah, ironically, she is applying to all schools in the South. So we come back here with her because she was having a hard time, which I totally get. So she finished out her high school experience, varsity cheer, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And now she should hear by tomorrow if she's going to go to Clemson or University of Tennessee or one of those. So she's just like, Daddy, you know what? I think California is a little overrated for me. I was like, okay, well, nice of you to figure that out now. But
is that funny?
I don't care, man. She's already been the first Mazzo to actually get a college acceptance letter. So I'm already super proud.
Dude, that's awesome.
Right? Even if she doesn't go, she's already beat everybody in the family. But yeah, pretty exciting to have her off to college next year.
And she wants to go away.
Yep.
So has it hit you yet? That she's going to go away?
Oh, man, it hits me all the time. Like
really?
When I go in her room and she hasn't cleaned it for a week, and I just think to myself, this will no longer be a problem next year because it'll just be clean all the time. My daughter's a super high D. She's like a 99 D.
Really?
So this is going to be really great for her. I'm excited for her more than it is I'm going to worry and miss her, because I'm going to miss her and I'm going to worry. But I'm more excited for her to really get some more life experience under her belt that I didn't have. That my life experience was just straight to the street, here you go and run, where she gets to, go have some fun, the college experience, before she gets to get in the dirt like the rest of us.
Yeah, it hit me a little bit last week with my daughter. It was like, I've been gung-ho, right? Like, she's going, this is great, apply to every school. Where do you want to go? Alaska? Perfect, right? Like, go far. Go experience the rest of the country, right? Like, I feel like Orange County is a little bit of a bubble, right?
Totally.
And then literally last week, I'm sitting here in the office and I'm like, dude, she's really leaving.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm kind of sad. I'm like, I had this moment where I was super sad, but then really proud of her. Like you said, right? First Mazzo to get a college acceptance letter. Like, dude, that's pretty damn cool.
Super cool.
Right? Like, you did that. Like,
I'll be sad for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, I think when at least from what I've heard is, yes, I'm going to be super sad. Both her mom and I.
I've heard you need an intervention. I've talked to some agents whose kids I saw on Facebook, right? A bunch of people, I took my kid to school, dropped them off at, XYZ college. So I called, hey, on Monday I was making my calls. I'm like, so you dropped your kid off. How'd that go? And two of the moms I talked to were like, it's the most devastating thing. Nobody prepares you for this. You hate them. You love them. I cried the whole way home.
Yeah.
Both moms. I was like, really? They're like, yeah.
My buddy, the father,
he
did the same thing, dropping his boy off at Oregon, saying the same thing. So,
really?
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that's going to be the case for sure. But I've also heard that they start interacting. Like, you get more calls and texts from them from school than you ever did when they were living at home. So I think there's going to be some trade-off for that.
Yeah. Well, you still got London at home.
I still have my baby girl, so she'll be there for the next 4 years.
So she'll be the favorite for a little while. My Maddie Soto is the favorite right now because she still loves me, doesn't give me any attitude.
Yep. So you got because our daughters are the same age. So we've got about 18 months left. It'll be great, and then
after that, you're a jerk. You're dumb.
You don't know.
You're
anything.
So stupid. Yeah. Why'd you do that? Yeah. Mom, tell him not to. I get that all day long.
Yep, and just embarrassing them all the time, which is the hidden plus that no one told me about for being a parent. It's like the best thing is embarrassing your teenage kids.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I didn't know it was so satisfying and now I go out of my way all the time, and it's just, you can watch their skin crawl. So that's people ask me what I do for a pastime. I'm like, embarrassing my daughters is probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, I have to show you my plan with the Buddy the Elf costume. We'll do that after. But that was my idea to embarrass my kid.
I love it.
I appreciate a good costume.
Yeah, maybe I should do the Snoop on the stoop one. That'd be a good one.
It was so good. It was so good. You have to embrace it because that window closes.
It closes,
right? Like,
man.
I think that's what I've realized here with Brooklyn getting older. My Brooklyn, because yours is Brooklyn too, right?
Yeah.
But the window is just closing. So now you see that with the littler one. It's like, man, it's really. Before you know it, you're going to be an empty nester.
Yeah, I think it was Josh that told me and threw this out at me, which is counting the summers you have left with your kids. So there, with Brooklyn, my Brooklyn, and yours too, there's no more summers left. I mean, my daughter turns 18 before she hits the summer. Let's be honest. When you're 18 and you're going off to college, you're going to spend that summer with her friends. And versus my youngest daughter, we've got 3 more summers left. And it's like, because summers are the best. That's the family time. That's the everything. And it's like, I'm sure we can bribe them to come back if we do like a trip to Hawaii or something. But those childhood summers with them are numbered, very, 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 very small number of them.
That is a crazy way to think about
Yeah.
it. Because when you think about just those, it's really, really small, right?
Yeah.
And that's insane because, Father Time's undefeated, right? Time keeps ticking.
Yep.
And that doesn't stop. That's a really good way to think about it. I think everybody out there should, look at your kids and think about how many summers do you have left, because it's going to go fast.
Yeah. Game changer.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to get a word from our sponsor. Coastal Insurance Group, here for all of your insurance needs, whether you're looking to insure your car, your auto, your dog, your jewelry. We're here to protect you, your assets, and your loved ones with all your insurance coverage. Give Tim Jarvis a call at 562-883-3944. He'll take great care of you. Now back to the show. So the kids growing up, they're getting older, right? My Kim also says, we're going to be empty nesters here by ourselves. I'm like, no, I'm going to retire someday. And she's like, please don't.
Yeah.
She's like, there's no way that you can just be home. Like, you'll lose your mind. And I'm like, no, I think I can just sit around the house. She's like, yeah, no chance. So, your schedule's crazy, right? I know that the most valuable asset in life is time.
Yeah.
Right. We're set amount of time that we get. Every minute counts. Right. And so you've got your team production. You've got how many offices that you run?
Roughly 19.
19 offices. You do coaching. You get coached. You have businesses that you own and you're part of. Like, how do you get it done? Right. Because I think a lot of people struggle with time, right? Like, I don't have enough time to do this. So,
yeah, I think first.
And how did you get good at that? Right. Because we all suck at time management.
Oh yeah.
Right. So what was that process like to get better at, from really being terrible to now being, a servant to your calendar?
Yeah, I think the 80-hour work weeks were always a thing that I was always used to and didn't really bother me so much. And it's a lot easier when you're younger and you don't have as much stuff going on. When it's just one thing to do or two things to do, it's really easy to work just lots of hours to be able to accomplish things.
Yeah.
But when you start adding things to your plate, like you spoke about, you really have to start compartmentalizing what it is that you want to do, what's important to you, what's your most important thing. By doing that, everything else is unnecessary. So I think for me, how did I learn? Was getting coached by it, learning the time block method, reading The One Thing, which was a great book, really helped. I mean, that book was a game changer. I think that was the book that everything made clear as to why I should honor my calendar.
Okay.
And when I realized that we all get the same amount of time, it's just deciding who, like, you can decide, I'm going to control who has this time. Otherwise, if you don't, then you're already deciding somebody else is going to have control of your time.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. So if I don't choose to do it, then somebody else is going to choose to do it. And that just creates massive amount of chaos. So I already knew what that looked like when I was adding things. And you're adding things, and there's only so much you can work. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much daylight that you can do.
Yeah.
So I found that compartmentalizing what I needed to do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, and really blocking those things out. I think that in our business, people want answers from us morning, noon, and night, and they want us to solve problems morning, noon, and night. So I have a time block: morning, noon, and night, and it's 30 minutes at those intervals, and it allows me to be able to solve problems and help people during those times. And I do not get interrupted unless it affects a moving van, and that's what I've always. If it affects a moving van, by all means, come get me, because that's more serious than anything I have going on. But that's so far and few between. I think we treat things as though it's always a moving van.
Always.
We're like, that's a moving van. You're like, no, it's not closing for 2 more weeks. Like, I can deal with that at 5 o'clock. So I think the first is relinquishing the control, or giving everything the same amount of urgency.
Yeah.
The second is compartmentalizing the hours that you need to do. So the most important thing for us is prospecting.
Yeah.
So that needs to be, take up the most amount. Yeah, non-negotiable. It needs to take up the most amount of time. And then, of course, our family time is equally as important. So blocking off when you come in, when you leave, your family vacations, your daddy-daughter dates, all of those things need to be picked out first, because if you do not have them on the calendar, they just won't get done.
Nope.
And it's like the vacations, when we do the vacations, we're like, if we don't put it on the calendar and we're like, man, like I just can't take a vacation. You just don't end up taking one, right? And then it leads to burnout. But when you put the vacation on, you know what I mean? You work up all the way to the day before vacation. Then you go on vacation. After about 2 or 3 days, you're like, man, I'm really glad that I booked this vacation.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to do it is by putting it and doing it in advance. And so when I think of that, it's like everything needs to be done in advance, and you can't have free time. It's got to be stacked. So it's like, after this podcast, I only have time to get in my car and drive back to my office, where I have a meeting at the office, and then one after that, one after that, one after that, all of which were chosen by me, blocked off by me, so that this way I'm in control of that time. Otherwise, it's going to be everybody else grabbing for your attention. It creates just so much gas.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I heard somewhere that they say, when you say yes to one thing, you say no to something else.
Yeah.
Right. And for years, I said no to most things that were most important to me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it was like, and somebody told me, that you could have an appointment. You have to be home at a certain time. And, let's say it's 6:00, but you'll roll in at 6:15 because you're on a call with somebody. Right. Or something like that. And so it's just a matter of saying yes to the things that are the most important, and realizing, like, the world's not going to end. Right.
No.
If you don't get to that one call or that one thing, but you have to be super structured during, when you're in it, you're in it.
Right.
Right. Like, there's no squirrel, right. And going and doing your own thing.
I think that's also being present in that moment, doing that thing. You're going to do it at a much higher level. Like, could you imagine if we're doing this talk and I'm answering emails at the same time? Like, but we do
emails
that.
The devil.
Well, I mean, think about it. How awkward would that be right now if I were answering emails? But we do this all the time with other things. We'll be checking emails while we're on the phone, or, talking to people, or on a Zoom call, or it's just kind of ridiculous. Multitasking is not a
terrible
good thing. It's not a good thing.
I'm trying to teach my kid that when I walk in her room and she's got her laptop open, she's got her phone, and then she's got Netflix on the TV. And I'm like, there's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way you're not doing all three things. She's like, no, Dad, I'm multitasking. I'm like, you failed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're going to take twice as long to do it, and you're going to get half as much from it.
Yeah.
Versus just knocking it out, you're going to get it done, and you're going to get it done at a more efficient rate, and you're going to get more out of it when you're just focusing on doing the one thing.
Yeah. Email's the devil. I'm listening to Fanatical Prospecting right now.
Yeah.
And there's a chapter on email being the devil, right? Like, how bad it is, how you're just like, I have to answer this email right now.
Right.
Otherwise, everybody thinks I'm a loser. I'm like, God, I remember when I was like that.
Yeah, I think it's delegate it or delete it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's either delegate it or delete it. And when we're talking about managing time, don't add something without taking something away. So if you're going to add it, then you got to remove something else from it. So the block stays the same.
Yeah.
But
I'm a creature of not doing that, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
I just add. I keep piling on, and like, then I look, I'm like, oh wow, this day's ending at 8 p.m.
Yeah, listen, it comes down to discipline, right?
Yeah,
and I was the least disciplined person for most of my life, and I'm still not disciplined in a lot of areas. And I can always be better, but if you look over the past 10 years, it's that the discipline, and the more discipline that I get, then the easier it is to do multiple things at a higher level, and time management and time blocking too.
Yeah. So you mentioned the one thing. What other books have you read that you really love, other than the Bible? I'm sure the Bible has to be number one, but any books? I mean, I've got some good ones back there if you wanted to cheat and look, but.
I mean, most recently, The Power of One More. That was a
Ed
really
Milet,
good by
right?
Ed Milet. That was a really great book.
Solid.
The Gap and the Gain. I think that was a game changer for me, because I realized, like, with my kids, I keep them in the gap so much more, and I start noticing if I'm in the gap versus the gain.
Yeah.
So that's helped me on my parenting style, and really helping me on my complaining and stuff like that. So those are the two most recent that I've read that I really like.
Yeah. One thing that really has helped me over the last couple of years is having a consistent morning routine.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What's your morning routine look like? Reading, journaling, any of that stuff?
Yeah. So my morning routine, I'm a early morning person. So it's, get up at 5:30 and then I would be at work by 6:37. That was just how I always started my day.
Yeah.
Which is a horrific way to start your day. You think you're getting so much more done, but I realize now, like, that was a terrible idea. So for me, it's getting up. I do my daily devotional. I read a book called Jesus Calling. It's a really, really great daily devotional book. Mm-hmm. I'll read the verse of the day. And I'll pray. So I go through my religious start to the day first with God, and then I will then watch Squawk on the Street, which is watching the market open. It's 30 minutes, and I'm just watching the market open to see what's going on with financials. I don't check any emails, any text messages, nothing. And then at 6:30, then I immediately go and I'll do my workout or my walk. I have, just depending on what the day is. And then from there, I'll go to prayer and then meditation after that immediately, and then go upstairs, get dressed for work, and then off to the office. So
Dude, that's a lot. You must be a mess.
Yeah, I'm a total mess, buddy. Yeah, we even talk about my nighttime routine. It's
Holy jeez.
So but it's a really good routine, and I've tweaked it a little bit. When this market changed, I needed more mindset things, and really needed to pour into myself to be healthy. They say on the airplane, you got to put your mask on first before you put it on others.
Totally.
And just having people that rely on me at such a higher level now than it was just my family. Well, the family's still there, and I still have all of you guys, like so many people and their families, that I know that I need to be in the right mindset to push through it. So that's why that morning routine is pretty darn stacked, is to make sure I'm mentally fit to be able to do all the things expected.
Yeah, I love that. I really feel that you win and lose between the ears.
Yeah.
Right. I tell everybody that. I think that was part of why I would be so down, is because mentally I just wasn't in a good place.
Yeah.
Right. For lots of reasons, and mostly because I didn't work at it. Right. I think a lot of men, especially, they'll see that as weakness, right? Like, why do I need a devotional? Why do I need prayer? Why do I need a journal? Right. But I think building that and giving yourself that love, that self-love, and just putting your mind in the right place is priceless.
Yeah, and creating routines, man, creating routines is so important.
Yeah.
I think it also gives us a sense of calm and peace as well, having a routine, something that we can count on, that we can do, that's within our control, that brings us positivity and makes us feel good before we start the day, which is lots of things outside our control that may not bring a whole lot of positivity.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me about your region and kind of the group we have now, right? And then where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? Like we always talk 5-year vision. So what was the units and volume, let's say, well, this year? You know what? That's kind of boring. Let's not talk about that. Where you're at now, running the region, 19 offices, all of that fun stuff. Where do you see the next 5 years?
Yeah, so this 5-year vision, that'll make me 50. So it was like, and I've always done 5-year visions, but this is one I've really put some thought into. Because 5 years from now, both my girls will be off of college or graduated college. It'll make me 50, which will be over 30 years in the business. It's like, that's a long time to be taking loan applications and stuff. And I stepped out for about a year, obviously, when I was doing the coaching thing. But like last night or the night before, I literally had this dream, and it was a nightmare. It was a refer eligible that all night I was trying to get an approved eligible, changing assets, changing them. It was all night, like literally all night long. I was trying to get this thing. And then I had the realtor there going, "Hey man, I thought this was pre-approved because we're in contract." So that was
oh my God.
So I'm definitely all back in it when I'm having those dreams again. So when going to the 5-year vision, 3 years, I won't be in personal production. This will be my last 3 years of personal production. I've committed to that. And then I'll be turning it over to my team and let my team take it and run with it and really forward thinking to change their lives any way that I can. And then just focusing on coaching and focusing on the region or being a part of a company, either or works great for me. So I think that being a part of a great company or owning a part of a great company are both awesome places to be in 5 years, and focusing on other people. It's really going to be more about other people, because when I went and did the coaching full time, I would tell you I was really loving so much about that.
Yeah.
But God brought me back here right when the market changed, and I could tell you, and I don't need to tell you, because it's like being present and being here and being in the business is so important during the tough times. So I think He brought me back for that just as much as anything else. And then, 3 years, that'll be that, and coaching full time.
Coaching full time. And so I always talk about like your purpose, right? So I think that changes over time.
It does.
Right? Like what drives you or what's your why, right? It's always family, right? You always want to be a provider. I think God wants us to provide. But what's your purpose now? Like, do you see it's about the employees, the teams, the coaching? Like Rick says he wants 500 millionaire students or something like that, right? Like,
yeah,
what is the purpose for JJ?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've thought a lot about it because it was always just wealth accumulation was the purpose until that no longer is a purpose, and then you're like, wow.
You think when you hit that number, you're going to be like, yes.
There's always another number, then another number, and
it's
being
in the gap, right?
There's always in the gap.
There's always another number.
Totally, it's like the horizon, as they call it in the book, right? The horizon's always there, but it's always moving. So, really, it is about growing. Like I'm focused on growing the loan officers, really getting them to do more loans per loan officer average and getting that back up.
Yep.
And I think right now they're just building these muscles and they're doing, anyone who's in the business right now is just building their muscles that is going to make their endurance so much more, and they're going to be so much better. So as the market turns, and it always changes and turns, that they're going to be able to run, and I want to be there to really just make sure that they're able to capitalize off it as much as possible and make sure that they're all coached in one way, shape, or form, so that they're following a plan. They're not just kind of doing it off on their own and really helping guide them. So I would say really the purpose is other people.
Other people's money, other people's goals.
Yeah.
Yep. I used to call myself a renegade loan officer.
Yeah.
Like, like running around with the gun, just spray and pray everywhere. Something's going to work, right?
Yeah.
Like, and since I got into coaching, it's been structure, it's been discipline, it's been plan. It's been achievable goals, right? It's writing stuff down, which I think is so underrated.
Yeah.
Writing down those goals and looking at them often, right? But before I think I went to a summit, I don't think I ever wrote goals down once in my life, right? Now I write it down with my team and we write them down and they're always like, oh boy, here we go, goals. And now they love it, right? Like in the beginning it was, are we really going to write down goals? Yes, I will do this. I will do that. I will. And we look at them every month and it's great.
Yeah.
But you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan.
You have to have a plan, and then having some accountability to that plan as well, whether it's your team, your wife, coaching, whatever, friends, family.
Accountability is priceless, especially in sales, because salespeople are just all over the place.
Yeah, because we are renegades, and I think the wanting to share it is, if two knuckleheads like you and I can do this, then like why wouldn't I want to share the impact on that with other people that are like us? Because I know what it's like without it.
Yeah.
And without that help, and I didn't have that, and I did it wrong for 15 years to do it right for 12. And I always look back, man, what if I knew this, what if I knew all these things back then? And the true answer is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You know? And I think that as long as we're positioning ourselves with the right people and helping them, then, we'll be that teacher for them to pay it forward.
Yep, for sure. So we have to talk about the tats. Because I'll be honest, when I first met JJ, he was, they told me about this guy who was making a boatload of money, and I was like, I'm going to go meet him, right? And then I meet him, and I'm like, this guy looks like he belongs in a biker bar.
Yeah,
like, what is going on? And he likes the Eagles. It was like a double lose, right? I was like, holy cow. So I think a lot of people would meet you and go, who's this? Who's this guy? But you got a couple of new tats. I would ask which is your favorite, but I'm sure they're all different.
Yeah, they're all different, man. I mean, they all speak to life experience, you know, for the most part. The ones are faith and grace, because those are the things that I need to be reminded of to have the most. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones that are most prominent. And then a lot of people that I've loved and a lot of people that I've lost. So it's just, I think everyone expresses themselves differently. Yeah. And, that's just a way that I've expressed myself. And it's kind of a written story over time, but nothing more than that. No biker gangs.
No
nothing,
banker gangs?
No,
Yeah, I was
nothing like
expecting
that.
you to tell me like you started in some motorcycle club or something like that.
No, man, I started in the mortgage business when I was 19, and I just started getting tattooed the whole way through.
Motorcycles, no, but beach cruiser, yes.
Beach cruisers, yes. And I always had, when I started out, I always had to cover them up. So I would wear, suit, tie, and it would be like I'd be going to open houses and it's 90 degrees in the summer and I'm all suited up and I could just hear my mom telling me from the grave, like, I told you so. I told you that was a bad idea,
Neck tattooed, stupid.
Yeah, but over time, I'm comfortable with who I am. It doesn't make me any better or less of a person. Don't judge a book by its cover. And I had to become comfortable with who I am to get to that point where I know it doesn't it doesn't define me one way or the other. It's just part of who I am. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I'm super grateful that you took some time out of your day and come share with my people and really just share your story, right? I learned some new things about you, and I think it's inspiring to see somebody who wasn't born with the silver spoon, didn't get it easily, right? Like it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of phone calls. It was a lot of rejection. We didn't even talk about all the rejection throughout.
Yeah.
You calloused your mind, but you did whatever it takes. Right. And I feel like when you're going through this journey to become successful, it's really easy to be like, this guy's got it all together.
Yeah.
Right. And you make it look easy. Right. Even me, and we're good friends and we talk all the time. You make it look easy, but it hasn't always been easy.
No, man, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right. The plan is so simple, but not easy, man. And I'm so honored to be here. Like I said before, man, watching you and seeing what you've done. I mean, you should be in this seat telling your journey just as much as me, man. So thanks for having me here.
Cool. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody out there. And again, another thanks to our sponsor, Coastal Insurance Group. Hit them up for all your insurance needs. They'll take really great care of you. Thanks. Bye.